Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery and watched the massive space station grow larger through the viewscreen. Nexus Prime stretched across the darkness like a metallic city, its lights twinkling like stars. He had dreamed of this moment since childhood, when humanity first looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. Now he knew they were not alone, and he was about to meet their new neighbors. Dr. Lisa Park walked up beside him, her tablet showing the latest translation updates. She had spent 3 years learning the common galactic language, and her excitement was clear on her face. "The Federation Council is ready to meet us, Jake," she said. 847 different species all working together in peace. Can you imagine it? Jake nodded but felt a knot in his stomach. The messages from Earth had been clear about their mission. Humanity needed allies, resources, and most importantly, they needed to avoid making enemies. Earth had finally achieved faster-than-light travel, but they were still decades behind the technology they had detected from deep space. Admiral Kevin Stone joined them at the forward viewing area. His military uniform looked out of place among the scientific equipment, but his presence was necessary. "The Krillian delegation has already arrived," he said quietly. "Their ships are 3 times the size of ours." Through the communication system, a voice spoke in the strange musical tones of the galactic language. Dr. Park listened carefully and then turned to Jake. "They are giving us docking instructions. Bay 712. The Discovery moved slowly toward the docking bay, passing other ships from across the galaxy. Jake saw vessels that looked like living creatures, others that appeared to be made of pure energy, and some that defied any description he could think of. Each one represented a species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years, while humans were still figuring out fire. The docking process took an hour, with careful adjustments and multiple communications with the station. When they finally felt the gentle bump of connection, Jake took a deep breath. "Remember, everyone, we represent all of humanity today. Let's make a good impression." The airlock opened with a hiss and they stepped into Nexus Prime. The corridor beyond was enormous, with ceilings that stretched up into shadows. Beings of every shape and size moved past them, some walking, others floating, and a few that seemed to flow like liquid across the floor. The air tasted different, with a metallic tang that reminded Jake of rain. Their escort was a tall, thin being with blue skin and 4 arms. It spoke through a translation device that turned its words into flat, emotionless English. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, representatives of the species called humans. I am Guide Veltar. The Council will see you in 1 standard hour." They were led through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Jake noticed that many of the beings they passed stopped to stare at them. Some pointed with whatever they used for hands, while others made sounds that the translator could not interpret. He wondered if they looked as strange to these aliens as the aliens looked to them. The quarters assigned to them were comfortable, but clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The furniture was too big, the doorways too tall, and the bed could have fit 6 people. Dr. Park immediately began setting up her equipment, eager to record everything they experienced. "The Federation has been at peace for over 2,000 years, she said, reading from her notes. "They solved the problem of war through something they call the hierarchy of strength. The strongest species lead, the weaker ones follow." Admiral Stone did not look happy about this information. "And where do they think we fit in this hierarchy?" Before Dr. Park could answer, their escort returned. "The Council is ready," it announced. "Please follow." The Council chamber was the largest room Jake had ever seen. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in curved rows that rose up toward a domed ceiling painted with star maps. At the center of the room was a platform where the human delegation was directed to stand. A voice boomed through the chamber, translated into English by their devices. "The Council recognizes the new species that calls itself human. You come from the 3rd planet of a yellow star in Sector 779. Your technology level is classified as primitive but advancing. Your request for membership in the Federation has been received." Jake stepped forward, feeling very small under the gaze of so many alien eyes. "Thank you for welcoming us to Nexus Prime. Humanity comes in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation with all species." A ripple of sounds moved through the chamber, which Jake realized might be laughter. From the front row, a massive figure stood up. It was easily 3 meters tall, covered in scales that looked like armor with claws that could tear through steel. When it spoke, its voice was like rocks grinding together, I am Zethkar, War Commander of the Krillian Empire. You speak of peace, small human. But peace must be earned through strength. I challenge you to ritual combat, as is our way. Show the Council that your species deserves respect. The chamber fell silent. Jake felt every eye focused on him, waiting for his response. He looked at Dr. Park, who nodded slightly, then at Admiral Stone, whose face was stone-cold with controlled anger. Commander Zethkar, Jake said carefully, humanity appreciates the honor of your challenge. But our diplomatic protocols require us to seek peaceful solutions first. We prefer to earn respect through cooperation and mutual benefit. The sound that came from Zethkar might have been laughter, but it sounded more like a growl. Cooperation. Mutual benefit. These are words used by prey species to avoid showing their weakness. Very well, human. Run back to your small world and tell your people what you have learned today. Other members of the council began making sounds, and Jake realized that many of them agreed with the Krillian. Species after species stood to voice their opinions, and the translation devices struggled to keep up. The words they caught were not encouraging. Weak, primitive, unworthy prey. Dr. Park touched Jake's arm gently. Perhaps we should request a recess to consider our position, she whispered. But before Jake could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed, and a voice announced something in the galactic language that sent beings running toward the exits. Jake grabbed Guide Veltar as it hurried past. What is happening? The blue being's forearms waved frantically. Attack on the outer systems. Krillian ships are hitting targets in Sector 779, your home sector. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. He activated his communication device and tried to reach Admiral Stone, who was already speaking urgently into his own communicator. The words Jake heard made his worst fears real. 3 human colonies had gone silent, and long-range sensors showed Krillian battlecruisers in Earth's outer system. Zethkar appeared beside them, his scaled face showing what might have been satisfaction. Perhaps now you understand how strength works in the galaxy, human. Your people refused our challenge, so we took what we wanted. This is the natural order. Jake looked around the chamber and realized that none of the remaining council members seemed surprised or upset by this news. They watched with curiosity, as if waiting to see how the humans would react to their first lesson in galactic politics. Admiral Stone appeared at Jake's side, his face pale but determined. Jake, I need to speak with you privately. Right now. They moved to a corner of the chamber while Dr. Park continued trying to get information from Guide Veltar. Admiral Stone spoke quietly but urgently. 3 colonies are gone. Completely destroyed. No survivors. Earth Command is asking for orders. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of the families on those colonies. Men, women, and children who had volunteered to build new homes among the stars. Now they were gone, killed to make a point about strength and hierarchy. When he opened his eyes, they were hard as steel. He activated his personal communicator and spoke directly to Earth Command. This is Captain Morrison. Message to all Earth forces. They wanted to see what humans are capable of in war. I suggest we show them. The message that went out from Nexus Prime that day would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. It was short, simple, and delivered in the flat, emotionless voice of the translation system. But every species that heard it felt a chill run through whatever they used for spines. The humans are coming. General Ryan Clark stood in the war room deep beneath Earth Command, staring at the holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated Krillian positions while blue ones marked human colonies. Too many of the blue markers had gone dark in the past 6 months. Commander Beth Williams entered the room carrying a data pad filled with reports from the Outer Rim. Her uniform bore the insignia of the newly formed Human Rapid Response Fleet, a force that did not exist before the Krillians decided to teach humanity about strength. The shipyards on Luna are working around the clock, she reported to General Clark. We have 200 new ships ready for deployment, with another 300 coming online next month. General Clark nodded without taking his eyes off the display. The Krillians expect us to build big, slow ships like everyone else in the galaxy. They think we will challenge them to the same kind of honorable combat they have used for centuries. They are wrong. Dr. Alex Turner walked over from his workstation, where he had been reviewing weapon designs. The new kinetic bombardment system is ready for field testing. The Krillians have never seen anything like it, because no other species has ever thought to drop simple chunks of metal from orbit at near light speed. Captain Nick Davis looked up from his tactical planning table. My teams are ready for the boarding operations. We have studied every Krillian ship design in the Federation database. Their ships are built for external combat, not for fighting inside the corridors. General Clark finally turned away from the display. 6 months ago, the galaxy saw us as weak because we chose diplomacy over violence. Today we show them what happens when humans choose violence over diplomacy. The first human strike came without warning. Commander Williams led a fleet of 50 small, fast ships against a Krillian supply convoy, heading toward the Kepler system. While Krillian ships were built like flying fortresses, human ships were built like sharks. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. Human ships darted between the massive Krillian vessels, hitting weak points that the enemy had never bothered to armor because no one had ever been fast enough to target them. When the shooting stopped, 12 Krillian ships were destroyed and the rest were retreating. Commander Williams opened a communication channel to the fleeing ships. "Tell Zethkar that Captain Morrison sends his regards," she said before ordering her fleet to disappear into the asteroid field where Krillian sensors could not track them. News of the victory spread quickly through both human and galactic communication networks. For the first time since the war began, humanity had won a battle against the mighty Krillian Empire. But General Clark was not satisfied with one victory. Captain Davis led the second phase of the human response. While the galaxy was still talking about the convoy attack, his special operations teams were already aboard 3 different Krillian stations. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, using stealth technology that made them invisible to Krillian security systems. The boarding operations were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Other species fought battles in space with honor and ceremony. Humans fought battles in the dark, using fear and confusion as weapons. By the time Krillian commanders realized they were under attack, the humans had already taken control of their most important systems. Dr. Turner monitored the operations from Earth Command, watching as his new weapons performed exactly as designed. The psychological warfare programs were especially effective against species that had never experienced true terror in combat. "The Krillians are requesting help from the Federation Council," reported one of the communication officers. "They claim we are using illegal weapons and tactics." General Clark smiled grimly. "There are no illegal tactics when you are fighting for the survival of your species. Ask the families on our destroyed colonies about illegal tactics." The third phase of the human campaign introduced the galaxy to something they had never seen: total war. While other species fought for territory or resources, humans fought as if their entire existence depended on winning every battle. Commander Williams led her fleet in hit-and-run attacks across 12 different star systems. Just when Krillian forces gathered to defend one location, human ships would appear somewhere completely different. The enemy could never predict where the next attack would come from. Captain Davis expanded his operations to include sabotage missions deep behind enemy lines. Human infiltrators disabled Krillian communication networks, destroyed supply depots, and turned the lights off in military bases. The psychological effect was devastating. Dr. Turner released his most controversial weapon, a biological agent specifically designed to target Krillian physiology. It did not kill, but it made Krillian soldiers so sick they could not fight effectively. The Federation condemned the weapon as barbaric, but Earth Command ignored their protests. The turning point came at the Battle of Kepler Station. Zethkar himself led a fleet of 100 Krillian warships to destroy the human colony there. He expected an easy victory against the small human defense force. General Clark had been waiting for this moment. "Zethkar wants to fight us directly," he told his staff. "Let's give him a demonstration of human military thinking." The battle began exactly as Zethkar expected. The humans had only 30 ships defending the station, and they were badly outnumbered. Krillian ships advanced in their traditional formation, preparing for the kind of honorable combat they had practiced for generations. Then the humans did something no other species had ever done. They used the space station itself as a weapon. Commander Williams had hidden explosive charges throughout the station's structure. When the Krillian fleet moved into attack position, she detonated the charges and turned the entire station into a massive shotgun blast of metal fragments, moving at incredible speed. 50 Krillian ships died in the first 10 seconds of the battle. The survivors found themselves surrounded by human ships that had been hiding in the debris field around the station. Captain Davis led boarding parties against the damaged vessels, while Dr. Turner's new weapons jammed their communications and targeting systems. Zethkar watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by tactics he did not understand. These humans did not fight with honor or follow the rules of civilized warfare. They fought like demons, using every advantage they could find or create. When only 20 Krillian ships remained, they tried to retreat. But Commander Williams had prepared for that too. Human ships equipped with faster-than-light inhibitors prevented the enemy from escaping to hyperspace. The remaining Krillians had to choose between surrender and death. Zethkar chose to fight to the end as honor demanded. His flagship lasted another hour before human boarding parties led by Captain Davis broke through to the command deck. The great Krillian war commander died with a human knife in his chest, still not understanding how his superior forces had been defeated. The news of the battle reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. The mighty Krillian Empire, which had dominated galactic politics for centuries, had been defeated by a species that had only achieved spaceflight recently. More importantly, other species began to realize what the Krillians had learned too late. Humans did not fight wars the way everyone else did. They fought wars the way apex predators hunted prey, with intelligence, patience, and absolutely no mercy for their enemies. Federation species who had remained neutral in the conflict began sending secret messages to Earth Command. They offered intelligence about Krillian positions, resources for the human war effort, and promises of support if humanity needed allies. General Clark read the messages with satisfaction. They are not offering friendship, he told his staff. They are offering tribute to the new dominant species. Fear is a more reliable ally than trust. Commander Williams prepared her fleet for the next phase of operations. With Zethkar dead and his fleet destroyed, the Krillian Empire was vulnerable. It was time to take the war to their home systems and show the galaxy what happened to species that tried to exterminate humanity. Dr. Turner began development of even more advanced weapons, designed specifically for the campaign against the Krillian homeworld. The galaxy had seen only a small sample of human military capabilities. The real demonstration was yet to come. Captain Davis trained new teams for operations unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. When humans finished with the Krillian Empire, no species would ever again mistake humanity's preference for peace as a sign of weakness. The galaxy's most feared species was about to learn that some mistakes could not be survived. President Helen Burke stood before the United Earth Assembly, looking out at representatives from every human colony and military installation. 2 years had passed since the first Krillian attack, and the war had changed everything about how humanity saw itself and its place in the galaxy. The Krillian Empire believes they can destroy us through superior numbers and ancient tradition, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the assembly hall. They are wrong. We will not stop fighting until every Krillian military installation is ash, every Krillian warship is scrap metal, and every Krillian who supported genocide against our people understands the price of their choices. Admiral Sam Foster sat in the front row, wearing the new uniform of the Human Expeditionary Force. The HEF was unlike any military organization the galaxy had ever seen, combining Space Navy, ground forces, intelligence operations, and scientific research into one unified command structure. After the assembly meeting, Admiral Foster walked to his office in the new military complex that had been built beneath the ruins of Geneva. The old peace organizations had been converted into war planning centers, their monuments to diplomacy now serving as reminders of what happened when peaceful intentions met violent reality. Lieutenant Kate Rogers knocked on his door and entered carrying flight reports from the stealth operations. She commanded the first squadron of human ships equipped with invisibility technology that made them undetectable to any sensors used by galactic species. The reconnaissance of the Krillian home system is complete, she reported. They have fortified every planet and moon, with defense stations covering all approach routes. They expect us to attack like every other species in the galaxy has always attacked. Admiral Foster smiled. Show me what they do not expect. Lieutenant Rogers activated the holographic display and showed him the results of her deep penetration missions. They have no defenses against ships approaching from below the galactic plane. No species has ever attacked from that direction, because it takes too long and uses too much fuel. But our new fusion engines can make the journey. Dr. Carl Weber entered the office carrying intelligence reports from across Krillian space. His network of human agents had infiltrated Krillian society in ways that amazed even him. Other species saw espionage as dishonorable, so they had no defenses against it. 17 Krillian client species have contacted us secretly, he reported. They want protection from Krillian revenge when we win the war. Apparently they believe human victory is inevitable. Admiral Foster looked at the intelligence reports with interest. What are they offering in exchange for our protection? Everything, Dr. Weber replied. Fleet positions, defense codes, supply schedules, and most importantly, they want to surrender before we attack their systems. They have seen what we do to our enemies and what we do to species that help us. The difference was significant. Species that fought against humanity were destroyed completely. Their military forces eliminated and their ability to wage war removed permanently. Species that helped humanity were rewarded with protection, trade agreements, and representation in the growing coalition of worlds that supported Earth. Lieutenant Rogers prepared for the next phase of Operation Prometheus. Admiral Foster's plan to attack the Krillian Empire from directions and in ways they could never imagine. Her stealth ships would lead the assault, appearing inside heavily defended systems without warning. The attack began on a Tuesday Galactic Standard Time. Lieutenant Rogers led 12 invisible ships through the Krillian home system, passing undetected through defense networks that had protected the Empire for 1,000 years. The Krillians had sensors that could detect ships made of energy, metal, or even exotic matter, but they had no sensors that could detect ships that bent light around themselves. The first targets were the communication satellites that connected the Krillian military command. Within 1 hour, Lieutenant Rogers and her pilots had destroyed every method the Krillians used to coordinate their defense. Individual planets and space stations could still fight, but they could not work together. Admiral Foster monitored the operation from Earth Command, watching as human forces demonstrated capabilities that shocked even their allies. The stealth technology was only the beginning of what humans had developed during 2 years of total war. Dr. Weber's intelligence network activated simultaneously across the Krillian Empire. Agents who had been quietly gathering information for months suddenly began sabotage operations that targeted the most critical systems in Krillian society. Power stations failed as their control systems were hacked by programs designed specifically to work with Krillian technology. Transportation networks shut down when key components were destroyed by explosives that had been placed months earlier. Food distribution centers stopped working when their computers were infected with viruses that no Krillian programmer understood. The psychological effect was more important than the physical damage. Krillian civilians had never experienced war on their own worlds. They had always been the ones attacking other species, safe in the knowledge that their military superiority would protect them. Now they learned what it felt like to be helpless victims. President Burke addressed the galaxy from the emergency session of the Federation Council. Most species had remained neutral during the first 2 years of the war, hoping that humans and Krillians would destroy each other. Now they realized that humanity was winning, and they needed to choose sides quickly. The Krillian Empire committed genocide against innocent human civilians, she said, her words translated into hundreds of languages. They did this because they believed we were weak and could not defend ourselves. Today they learned the cost of that mistake. The Federation Council tried to demand that humanity stop its attacks and negotiate a peaceful solution. President Burke's response became famous throughout the galaxy. You stood by and watched while they murdered our children. Now you will stand by and watch while we return the favor. One by one, Federation species began to understand that the old galactic order was ending. The Krillian Empire, which had dominated galactic politics for centuries, was being systematically destroyed by a species that most of them had never heard of 3 years earlier. Lieutenant Rogers led her squadrons deeper into Krillian space, attacking targets that should have been impossible to reach. Her pilots used tactics developed from centuries of human air combat, adapted for 3-dimensional space warfare that confused and terrified the enemy. Krillian military commanders tried to respond to human attacks, but they could not fight enemies they could not see or predict. Human ships appeared without warning, destroyed their targets with weapons that defied Krillian understanding of physics, and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Dr. Weber's agents began the most controversial part of their operations. biological warfare specifically designed to target Krillian physiology. The weapons did not kill immediately, but they made Krillian soldiers too sick to fight effectively, while leaving other species completely unharmed. The Federation condemned the biological weapons as violations of galactic law, but President Burke ignored their protests. "There are no laws that protect species which commit genocide," she announced. "The Krillians chose to fight this war without mercy, so they will receive no mercy in return." Admiral Foster coordinated the largest military operation in human history, directing attacks across 50 star systems simultaneously. The scale of the campaign was unprecedented, requiring logistics and planning capabilities that no other species possessed. The turning point came when the first Federation species officially changed sides. The Altarian Republic, which had been allies of the Krillian Empire for 200 years, announced that they were joining humanity's coalition and would provide military support for the war effort. Within days, 16 more species followed the Altarian example. They offered ships, troops, intelligence, and resources to support the human war machine. Some joined because they believed in human ideals of justice and freedom, but most joined because they were terrified of what would happen if they opposed humanity. Dr. Weber met with representatives from the new allied species, establishing intelligence-sharing agreements that gave humans access to information from across the galaxy. The network of spies and saboteurs that had focused on the Krillian Empire now expanded to monitor every potential threat to human interests. Lieutenant Rogers received new orders to expand her operations beyond military targets. Her stealth ships began attacking Krillian industrial facilities, transportation hubs, and resource extraction operations. The goal was not just to win battles, but to destroy the Krillian Empire's ability to function as a civilization. President Burke announced the policy that would define humanity's approach to galactic politics for generations. "Species that support us will prosper under our protection. Species that oppose us will learn why the galaxy fears the name of Earth." Admiral Foster prepared for the final phase of Operation Prometheus, a direct assault on the Krillian homeworld itself. The attack would demonstrate to every species in the galaxy that humans could reach any target, defeat any defense, and eliminate any threat to human survival. The galaxy watched and waited, knowing that the outcome of the next battle would determine the future of Interstea. Admiral Dan Murphy stood on the command deck of the UES Retribution, watching the largest fleet in galactic history assemble in the darkness of space. 5 years had passed since Captain Morrison's first meeting with the Krillians, and now 47 different species had joined humanity's coalition against the Empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Commander Julie Ross walked over from the diplomatic section, carrying reports from the various alien delegations aboard the flagship. Her job was perhaps the most difficult in the fleet, keeping species that had been enemies for thousands of years working together toward a common goal. "The Vegan Trade Union is concerned about the Altarian battle formations," she reported to Admiral Murphy. "They say the Altarians are positioning their ships to attack Vegan vessels if the Alliance breaks down during the battle." Admiral Murphy looked at the tactical display showing the positions of over 3,000 ships from dozens of different species. Each group maintained their traditional formations and tactics, making coordination almost impossible. "What did you tell them?" "I reminded them that humans destroyed the Krillian Third Fleet last month using only 200 ships," Commander Ross replied. "I suggested they worry more about following our battle plan and less about fighting each other." Captain Steve Martin approached from the weapons station, where he had been reviewing the final preparations for the assault on Krillios Prime. The Krillian homeworld was defended by orbital fortresses, energy shields, and the largest fleet the Empire could assemble. "All human ships report ready for combat," he said. "The new adaptive weapon systems have been tested against every type of Krillian defense. Our alien allies are still using the same weapons they had 500 years ago." General Amy Watson joined them from the Ground Assault Planning Center. Her troops were preparing for the first invasion of a Krillian world, using tactics that had been developed from centuries of human warfare on Earth. "The landing zones have been selected. My forces will hit 12 different locations simultaneously, while the orbital battle draws their attention." Admiral Murphy nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice reached every ship in the massive armada, translated into dozens of languages by computers that had learned to think like humans during 5 years of constant war. "Today we end the Krillian Empire," he announced, "not because we hate them, but because they chose to commit genocide against innocent humans. Every species in this fleet has seen what happens to civilizations that support mass murder. Today the galaxy learns that justice delayed is not justice denied." The attack on Krillios Prime began with a demonstration of human technological superiority that amazed even their allies. Captain Martin's adaptive weapon systems analyzed Krillian defenses in real time and modified themselves to overcome each obstacle as it appeared. The orbital fortresses that had protected the Krillian homeworld for 1,000 years were designed to stop conventional attacks from massive battle fleets. They had shields that could absorb the energy from a star, weapons that could destroy planets, and armor that had never been penetrated by any galactic weapon. Human ships attacked the fortresses with weapons that changed their fundamental properties every few seconds. Laser beams that started as energy became solid matter when they hit the shields, bypassing the defense completely. Kinetic projectiles that began as metal transformed into exotic matter that passed through armor like it was empty space. Admiral Murphy watched the battle displays as Krillian defenses failed one by one. "The fortresses are trying to adapt to our weapons," reported Captain Martin, "but our systems adapt faster than theirs can respond." Commander Ross coordinated the alien portions of the fleet, using diplomatic skills that no other species possessed to maintain unity among natural enemies. When vegan ships tried to abandon their assigned positions, she reminded their commanders that humans had perfect records of who helped and who ran away during battles. "The Altarians are requesting permission to break formation and pursue retreating Krillian ships," she reported to Admiral Murphy. "They want to claim battle honors for their species." "Denied," Admiral Murphy replied. "Tell them that humans do not fight for honor or glory. We fight to win, and winning requires discipline and coordination." General Watson's ground assault began while the orbital battle was still raging. Human dropships fell through the atmosphere of Krillios Prime like meteors, using entry trajectories that no other species had ever attempted because they were too dangerous for conventional technology. The Krillian planetary defense forces had prepared for invasion by following traditional galactic warfare patterns. They expected enemy troops to land at convenient locations, establish secure beachheads, and advance slowly using massive formations that could be easily targeted. Human forces landed everywhere at once, in formations that were too small and too fast for Krillian weapons to track effectively. General Watson's troops moved through Krillian cities using urban warfare tactics that had been perfected during centuries of conflict on Earth. The psychological effect on Krillian civilians was devastating. They had never seen warfare conducted inside their own cities, with enemies who moved through buildings like ghosts and struck from directions that should have been impossible to attack from. Admiral Murphy received reports from the ground assault with satisfaction. "Krillian military commanders are requesting permission to surrender," announced one of the communication officers. "They say they cannot protect their civilian population from human ground forces. Tell them that surrender will be accepted only from their supreme commander," Admiral Murphy replied. "We did not come here to accept partial victories." The battle for orbital control of Krillios Prime lasted 18 hours. When it ended, every Krillian defense station had been destroyed or captured, and the planetary shields that had protected their homeworld for millennia were under human control. Captain Martin coordinated the final phase of the space battle, using human ships to hunt down the remaining Krillian vessels trying to escape the system. The aliens in the Coalition fleet watched in amazement as human technology allowed perfect tracking of enemy ships even when they tried to hide in asteroid fields or behind planets. Commander Ross received surrender offers from individual Krillian commanders throughout the system, but she followed Admiral Murphy's orders and refused to accept anything less than complete capitulation from the Empire's leadership. General Watson's forces reached the planetary capital while the space battle was still ending. Her troops surrounded the government buildings where the Krillian High Command had taken shelter, using siege tactics that had been refined during thousands of years of human warfare. The end came when Zethkar's replacement, a younger Krillian commander named Velnoth, emerged from the government complex carrying a white banner. General Watson accepted his formal surrender on behalf of all human forces, but the real ceremony would wait for more important figures. Admiral Murphy ordered Captain Martin to prepare the UES retribution for the arrival of special passengers. Captain Morrison, the diplomat who had witnessed the first Krillian challenge 5 years earlier, was coming aboard to accept the final surrender of the species that had started the war. The ceremony took place in the main hangar bay of the flagship, with representatives from all 47 allied species present as witnesses. Captain Morrison wore a simple human diplomatic uniform, while Velnoth wore the elaborate armor of a Krillian war commander. 5 years ago, your predecessor challenged me to ritual combat, Captain Morrison said to the defeated Krillian. He believed that humans were weak because we preferred peace to violence. Today you surrender to the species he thought was prey. Velnoth knelt before Captain Morrison and spoke the ritual words of complete surrender. The Krillian Empire yields to the superior strength of humanity and requests mercy for our surviving people. Captain Morrison accepted the surrender, but his next words were heard by communication systems throughout the galaxy. Mercy is earned through wisdom, not requested through defeat. Your people will have the chance to earn mercy by learning to live without making war on others. Admiral Murphy watched as representatives from across the galaxy witnessed the end of the Krillian Empire. The species that had dominated galactic politics for centuries was now a defeated enemy, dependent on human mercy for their continued existence. Commander Ross began the complex negotiations that would determine the fate of former Krillian territories and client species. Her work would establish the framework for a new galactic order based on human principles, rather than traditional hierarchy. General Watson prepared her forces for the long-term occupation of Krillian worlds, using techniques developed for post-conflict reconstruction on Earth. The goal was not to rule the defeated enemy, but to transform them into productive members of galactic civilization. Captain Martin began the process of integrating captured Krillian technology with human systems, though most of what they found was primitive compared to what humans had developed during 5 years of intensive warfare. The galaxy had learned its most important lesson. The species they had dismissed as weak newcomers were now the dominant force in known space, and they had achieved that dominance not through luck or accident, but through superior. Chancellor Greg Thompson stood before the assembled representatives of 847 species in the rebuilt council chamber on Nexus Prime. 10 years had passed since the end of the Krillian War, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have imagined when humans first arrived as hopeful diplomats seeking friendship. Admiral Maria Santos sat in the front row, wearing the uniform of the Galactic Defense Force, an organization that combined military units from dozens of species under human leadership and tactical doctrine. The old Federation military had been disbanded after the war, replaced by forces trained in human methods of warfare and peacekeeping. Dr. Paul Johnson walked between the rows of delegates, carrying reports on the reconstruction efforts that had transformed former Krillian territories into prosperous trading partners. His work had proven that humans were as skilled at building peace as they were at waging war. Captain Rachel Kim stood near the viewing windows that showed the busy traffic of Nexus Prime spaceport, where ships from across the galaxy came and went under the protection of human-led patrol fleets. Her exploration ships had pushed the boundaries of known space beyond anything previously imagined. Chancellor Thompson activated the translation systems that would carry his words to every corner of the galaxy. 10 years ago, humanity came to this chamber seeking friendship and cooperation. We were told that strength was the only currency of galactic politics, and that weak species deserved whatever fate the strong chose for them. The delegates listened in silence. Many of them had been present during that first meeting, when Zethkar had challenged Captain Morrison to combat and declared humans to be prey species unworthy of respect. Today we gather to sign the new Galactic Charter, Chancellor Thompson continued. This document establishes principles that previous generations of galactic leaders never imagined: that all species have the right to exist in peace, that conflicts must be resolved through negotiation rather than violence, and that the strong have a duty to protect the weak rather than exploit them. Admiral Santos reviewed the military provisions of the new charter, which established the Galactic Defense Force as the primary peacekeeping organization for known space. Under her command, Former enemies now worked together to prevent the kind of aggressive expansion that had led to the war. The GDF combined human tactical innovation with the best technologies and traditions from member species. Krillian armor was integrated with human stealth systems. Altarian energy weapons were enhanced with human targeting computers, and vegan shield technology was improved with human adaptive algorithms. Dr. Johnson presented his report on the transformation of former Krillian worlds. Rehabilitation rather than punishment has proven more effective than anyone expected, he told the assembly. Former Krillian military officers now serve as instructors in the Galactic Defense Academy, teaching other species about the mistakes that led to their empire's downfall. The reconstruction program had been controversial among human military leaders, who wanted harsher punishment for the species that had committed genocide against human colonies. But Dr. Johnson's approach had proven that mercy could be more powerful than revenge. Captain Kim described the expansion of galactic exploration under human leadership. We have discovered 43 new star systems and made contact with 16 previously unknown species in the past 5 years. Each new civilization is welcomed into the galactic community through peaceful contact rather than conquest or intimidation. The exploration missions used human diplomatic techniques that had been refined during the integration of coalition species. First contact teams included representatives from multiple civilizations, showing new species that cooperation was possible between very different forms of life. Chancellor Thompson called for the formal signing of the new Galactic Charter. One by one, representatives from every major species in known space approached the ceremonial table and added their agreement to the document that would govern galactic politics for generations. The first signature came from the Altarian Republic, which had been among the earliest supporters of humanity during the war. Their representative spoke briefly about how human leadership had brought stability to regions that had known only conflict for centuries. Krillian territories signed through their new democratic governments, established with human assistance after the old empire was dissolved. The representative who signed for the Krillian worlds was Velnoth, the same commander who had surrendered to Captain Morrison 10 years earlier. My people have learned that true strength comes from protecting others rather than dominating them, Velnoth said as he signed the charter. We are grateful for the chance to earn redemption through service to galactic peace. Admiral Santos announced the establishment of the new Galactic Defense Academy on Luna, where officers from every member species would train together using human military doctrine, adapted for the needs of a peaceful galaxy. The academy would teach both warfare and peacekeeping, ensuring that future generations understood both the power of violence and the wisdom of avoiding it. Dr. Johnson outlined the economic integration programs that had created prosperity throughout former conflict zones. Trade networks established under human supervision had generated more wealth for participating species than centuries of traditional conquest and tribute. Systems Captain Kim revealed plans for the next phase of galactic exploration, including missions to distant galaxies that might contain civilizations even older and more advanced than anything yet discovered. The exploration fleets would carry the message that newcomers would be welcomed as friends rather than conquered as enemies. The ceremony concluded with Chancellor Thompson's final address to the galaxy. Humanity did not seek to become the dominant species in known space. We were forced into that role by those who mistook our preference for peace as a sign of weakness. Now that we have proven our strength, we choose to use it for the benefit of all civilizations. The delegates rose and applauded, not because they loved humanity, but because they understood that the new galactic order offered them something the old system never had: security, prosperity, and the freedom to develop their own civilizations without fear of conquest. Admiral Santos departed for the Defense Academy, where she would oversee the training of the next generation of galactic peacekeepers. Her students would learn human military tactics, but more importantly, they would learn human values about when and why to use force. Dr. Johnson returned to his reconstruction projects, working to heal the damage caused by centuries of warfare between galactic species. His teams had proven that former enemies could become productive partners when given the right incentives and support. Captain Kim prepared for departure on the exploration ship UES Pioneer, leading a crew that included representatives from 20 different species. Her mission would take her beyond the edge of known space, seeking new worlds and new civilizations to join the growing galactic community. Chancellor Thompson remained at Nexus Prime, where he would oversee the implementation of the new galactic charter and mediate disputes between species that were still learning to resolve conflicts through negotiation rather than violence. The final scene took place at the Galactic Academy on Luna, where young beings from across the galaxy studied together in classrooms that looked out on the blue marble of Earth. The lesson being taught that day was about human history, specifically the long journey from a warlike species that fought constantly among themselves to the civilization that had brought peace to the stars. Your ancestors believed that might made right, the human instructor told his diverse class of alien students. They thought that the strongest species deserved to rule over the weaker ones. But strength without wisdom leads only to destruction. A young Krillian student raised one of his scaled hands. Teacher, why did humans choose to help their former enemies instead of destroying them completely? The instructor smiled and gestured toward the image of Earth visible through the classroom window. Because we learned something from our own history that your species had not yet discovered. The greatest victory is not conquering your enemies. The greatest victory is turning your enemies into friends. The students from dozens of different species looked at each other and then back at their teacher. They were the future of galactic civilization. Raised to believe in cooperation rather than conquest. Taught to see diversity as strength rather than weakness. The galaxy's most feared species had indeed learned the hard way that starting a war with humans was a mistake no civilization could survive. But in learning that lesson, they had also discovered that humans offered something more valuable than conquest. The chance to build a better future together.